the crap just before I just got our shit correct.
25th. Now, does it have recording dates?
On this, yeah, August of 93.
August 93?
Yeah.
I wasn't, of course I sit there and try to remember as much as I can. And it seems like it was in the summertime. And then this one, okay.
It was recorded at Brilliant Studios in San Francisco, August to September of 93.
Yeah. It was a month of work. It was in an age where you'd get hired to make a record and they're like, like a month was, it's not.
That's not out of the question.
Not out of the question. And you got paid a good amount of money for your work. And
well, nowadays, a session with some guy is probably $400 to $500 a day for an 8-hour day, right? Was that a lot different back then, like $250 a day or something? Or, just for your time as a producer.
Right. Well, of course, it depends. Back then, it depended on who it was.
Oh, okay. Right.
Because 1993, that's more than 30 years ago. Things were, pretty much different in every way. If you were working on a record that was, for a actual record label that was, not somebody's basement undertaking or something, you might $20,000 production fee would not be out of the question.
This is post Nirvana where like the record labels are thinking we can cash in like a jackpot on whatever the kids are buying this stuff, so $20,000 is not out of the question.
No, that was it's like, oh yeah, oh heck yeah, I'll do your record. It was like now I don't I can't remember the exact details of all the money and stuff, but that was just, like a round table figure of what would get thrown out there to be, negotiated further if needed be. And, I'd just be like, holy fuck, that's great. And of course they would, there's no more situation like that anymore. There's no record labels that have thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars to throw at things. There's no, bands, other than the 1% of the 1% of the 1% that are generating any income at all from
Taylor Swift,
from recorded music. But, back then it was not like that. People were looking for the next Nirvana, the next Soundgarden, the next, what have you. Like a lot of the people that worked at these record labels, whether it was Relativity or, I'm trying to think of some of the other ones that were not Warner Brothers or Columbia, not the... Yeah. The sort of the second tier ish labels that, also had some popular songs and, had some popular records and stuff. But a lot of those guys were music fanatics and loved the history of music and loved guitars and loved songs and loved studios and really excited about everything. And some of them were, out of their minds, no idea how records are made, no idea the history of music. There was a wide variety, like somebody that was brought in to make something profitable that didn't really understand how things worked. And the Overwhelming Colorfast record, the overseer for that project was great. We were just used to making records as cheaply and quickly as we could because nobody had any money. This is, starting from the beginning of the 80s and, recording on 8-track things and, whatever you could do to just make as many recordings as quickly as you can.
Right.
I was hired to work on some other records where you'd have 3 weeks a month, 5 weeks to make a record, and we were just like, well, talk to the Colorfast guys, and they're like, yeah, we want to do all this stuff, and we have 20 songs to do and stuff. It's like, yeah, we got a month. Let's do it all. I think probably the record label's idea is that you pick 10 songs and you go over them with a fine-tooth comb, and you make sure that there's 3 or 4, bona fide Michael Jackson Thriller level hit songs on there. And, and I'm sure that's their idea of assigning a month or 5 weeks to making an album. And we're just like, and they had their previous record that they had made with Butch Vig.
This one, the Paint Splatter record.
Yeah,
I think they actually got dirty in the
well, it looks like
session.
it looks legit. They had spent a long time, making everything right. And before I even knew the Overwhelming Colorfast, the Young Fresh fellows were recording with Butch Vig, and he was talking about this record and the problems and the issues that they had. And
you were in the Fellows at that time.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
So there was, and I was like, oh, well, listen to that, and then, put it on, and it's like, record pretty good. Whatever you did, and sounds good to me. And then they're like, yeah, we want you to do our record. It's like, oh yeah, I like that other one. Let's go.
So why did they pick you? Because you were the guy. I mean, I'm falling short of knowing your history, but actually, let's stop for a second there. Let's start from the beginning. Edit this little part out, and so I can get my intro in.
Right.
and then we can go, because it's better to have a conversation like turned down with the music behind. So anyway,
the prequel
is
done.
Welcome back to Work Truck Record Review. Today I have a special guest, Mr. Kurt Bloch, that produced this record, Overwhelming Colorfast, 2 words, which I've got this copy in 95 when I was a young man. I have a little story to tell behind that, but this is that very copy I found in my old collection, and we're going to talk with the man that was there running the desk at the time, and go over some stories. We probably won't go track by track, but with this first one, Toss Up is a banger. The one thing about this is I kind of know the names of several of the tracks, but there's no numbers. So when the record gets deep,
right.
I don't know which song title is which. It kind of is like a run-on. That's an artistic decision.
I wrote an artistic indecision. Nobody in their right mind, in my mind, would do this. Especially with an album that has 16 songs on it. I don't know. I was not privy to the artwork designing.
But it's definitely iconic. I mean, these 2 little finger monkeys.
Yeah.
Is what I would call them.
Photo was great, fantastic.
And I still have a little address sticker of the place in Boise I lived at, 423 Thatcher. My old house that sold. Can I tell a story behind this record real quick?
You have my permission.
Because it leads up to my meeting of you personally. So in the mid-90s when I lived in Boise, I was in a band, and I was also doing underground comics for this local Boise rag called Street Mag, who was published by, do you remember Pat Smalljohn from the Tree People?
Okay, sure.
He's since passed away, but him and his wife, Anna Fell, put out this underground sort of rag that recorded the scene. Anyway, I did underground comics for them, and I decided to branch out because I saw this this weekly or an underground zine from Spokane, and I think it was called Discord. I sent them some copies of my comics, and they were happy to publish them. And they said, well, we can't pay him anything. And this guy sent me this CD in the mail, and I wasn't really familiar. I think my roommate had some Overwhelming Colorfast, but I thought, wow. Back then I was really into like Billy Childish and the Head Coatees, a lot of garage rock stuff. That was kind of like my jam, and Social Distortion. I wasn't into this type of music per se in the mid-90s stuff, like the whatever Sunny Day Real Estate thing was happening at that time. This, I quickly discovered I liked this. It was not like that other stuff that I did. Anyway, so on the Memorial Day weekend of 1995, I did a road trip by myself because I was sick of all my friends. And I hit the road, and I didn't want to go camping. I wanted to go somewhere I'd never been. And so I went to Spokane, Washington. And I thought, I'll just see what happens when I get there. So I get into town, I go to a bar, start drinking. I met a girl there about my age. We hit it off. We went to a motel room. Nothing happened because I passed out before anything did. We got into a lot of deep conversation and stuff, but I remember waking up the next day and she hand wrote a note that says, "Hey Nick, you were a lot of fun. Too bad it was so short," or whatever. Have a nice life. See ya. And so it was like I woke up alone. This bird had flown, that kind of thing. And it was a long drive back to Boise, and it was just a little bit melancholy on that trip home. And this record was the perfect tonic to that feeling of my little tiny adventure. And, I guess I'd seen on the back of it produced by Kurt Bloch. And I think I'd seen a couple fastback things in my orbit in Boise. So 5 years later, I moved to Seattle, and I'm at the Tractor, and you're there. Somebody points out who you are. I'm like, oh, shit. I'm sort of starstruck because this guy, produced one of his albums.
Spearheaded.
Yeah. I know he's a dude that's in his famous band, but I'm not really familiar with fastbacks enough to broach any conversation. So I don't know if you remember this, but I came up to you and I said, "Are you Kurt Bloch that produced the album Two Words?"
I do remember that.
You do remember that? That was my in with you. And then these many years later, here you are talking about this very record.
There we have a well-worn copy.
Yes.
That's class right there. That's it's like the if it was an LP record, with the tattered cover and the ringwear, and the record that's been left out from parties, and unfortunately this wasn't available on LP at its time of release, but that would be a treasured a treasured item. And also records from the 90s tended to fare a little bit better. They didn't figure they would sell enough to even make any LPs of this, but they lasted a little bit better. The few people that bought LPs probably generally took a little bit better care of them.
Right.
And this is something that you might be interested in. Do you notice, it would have been starting in the early 70s, not just how record covers were made, the glued on paper over cardboard, the US record covers, but even something happened with the printing technique in general, starting in maybe the late 60s but early 70s, and on through the 70s. You don't get the ring wear on the record covers that you did on the 60s records. Well, something else
this is some Virgo on Virgo violence of like paying attention to small details. But I've noticed that like when it comes to the Beatles, the Parlophone releases with the flipbacks, they have those nice laminated covers
Right.
that are so almost bulletproof. The back paper is very fragile.
Right, and will turn brown and discolor.
But I don't see the type of ringwear happening on those.
No, because they're laminated. But even the unlaminated, ones from the U.S. manufacturers, like, you're probably not going to see Nirvana bleach with ringwear on it.
The thing is, my collection of vinyl was so focused on my parents' records. So, and when I was a young person in the 90s, I was just collecting CDs solely. So, I mean, with a few exceptions, but yeah, I guess I never noticed the difference with better produced jackets.
Yeah, and I'm not sure it would be something for the Googleites to focus on at another time.
Right. The conclusion of my intersection with Overwhelming Colorfast is that the 10 years in 2008, 2007, we recorded a cover of Roy Orbison from this record. And on this record that we put out, Wait a Line and Intersection. And at that time...
Hold it like this so you can actually see.
There you go. At that time, we were all into MySpace. That was like how we connected with people. And somebody pointed out to me Bob Reed's handle on MySpace. That's pretty cool.
Man. What a vocal.
Yeah. So I didn't know, I thought I knew all the lyrics to Roy Orbison, but there was some part of it that I couldn't get. And somebody put me in touch with Bob Reed personally through MySpace to figure out what the actual lyrics were. I got his blessing and the right lyrics. We recorded that. Soon afterwards, I found out that Dan Reed was living in Seattle. He was working at Pepsi with a cousin of mine. And my cousin said, hey, there's this guy, Dan Reed, that's in this band, and he somehow, I don't know, with chicken and egg, he found out about the cover. I became friends with Dan Reed. Dan Reed was also in a band of one of my friends' bands, Lowland High. This is like going into 2010. Anyway, 2009. I became friends with Dan, and then you will remember this. There was going to be a reunion show in January of 2010. Bob was going to come up. They needed a rhythm section. Or not a rhythm section. Dan was playing drums, but he asked me and Heather to be bass and guitar and to fill out the thing for their reunion show. And I was overjoyed. And I soon found out that a lot of the material was out of my league. You were also called in to be part of that, and Joe Renicky from the Mises.
Sure.
And it was a fantastic show. That was one of the funnest shows I've ever played.
Something like January 1.
It was January, it was New Year's Day of 2010.
Yeah. Absolutely killer.
Yeah. And then subsequently, like a couple of years later, Dan actually filled in as a drummer for Rip Brokers for a short. He was a placeholder when Ryan Maxwell took a break, and was also, Dan was in a video aping the drums that Ryan played in a song, and your buddy Lulu Gargiulio was filming all that. So it comes kind of full circle to our little family here. But
welcome to Seattle.
Yeah. Anyway, that's the end of my story. I'm still good buddies with Dan, and I had a brief, meeting with Bob. Bob might remember me, but I'm a little closer connected to Dan, and hopefully he's not burning up right now in LA. He posted something on Facebook like he could see all the smoke and fire from his house and shit. So anyway, and he also included us in on Facebook that there is a vinyl version coming out of Two Words that I ordered, and I guess it's gatefold, so I think that might have some outtakes. But I'd like to go back to so your history getting involved with this record. Did you guys tour with Overwhelming, or you just heard of Overwhelming through the fellows?
I think I was just aware of their first album.
Okay.
And what made them call me. Maybe it was they liked that first Flop album.
Okay.
Perhaps, that series of thoughts I couldn't say for sure, but I think they said, "Oh yeah, we want to, we love that record. Would you want to record our band?"
Mm-hmm.
I was like, "Oh, I love that record. It was great."
I love this song, by the way. This is the one that we didn't do that night because it was, for whatever reason, it was too complicated.
But we did do "Wheels of Confusion"
Yes.
by Black Sabbath.
That I could not. Heather did just fine. I had to bow out because it was too much finger gymnastics on the guitar.
A little bit of gymnastics on that. And I don't remember there being a lot of negotiation or anything to, do the record. I think, back then it was summer of '93. There was,
that involved a phone call, right? I mean, it wasn't any instant messaging or texts or
it was just
emails.
Phone calls, like we want you to do a
I remember phone
record.
calls. Used to happen.
And then probably just some sort of phone call with the record label people, and then trying to find a studio in San Francisco to do it. Maybe somebody had already scoped out the studio that we'd recorded at, which was absolutely a fantastic facility.
Right. It says it in here. Was the
brilliant,
yeah.
With
so was the band living in San Francisco? I know they're from Antioch or whatever, but were they living in the city at that time, or they? Do you know?
Gosh, the actual studio at Brilliant. I know I stayed there. I don't remember. Did everyone else stay there? Did they drive back? It is quite a trek to Antioch.
Yeah.
They might have been living in the city. That I can't quite remember. I do remember that, I had a little apartment that was part of the studio.
Because you were going to be parked there. You were going to be involved in this project for weeks at a time?
Yeah, it was either 4 or 5 weeks.
Oh, wow.
Which is how you made records. I mean, and if you can imagine, their other record was very heavy-handedly worked on, to get things exactly, the way they needed to be. And,
right.
I love Butch Vig. I think he's absolutely fantastic and a great dude.
Do you remember these guys, Norm Kerner, Brad Whitaker? These are the tape operators and the engineers.
Right.
Were you just bossing guys around?
What is Wolf? What's his name?
I'm trying to find a Wolf name here.
Norm Kerner was...
Wolf Kessler.
Wolf Kessler, yeah.
Yeah.
When Norm Kerner was the studio owner, Wolf Kessler was the sort of the main... He's the guy that... He was a smart guy that... it is 93. There was no digital gear. They had a fantastic console there. They had it was like a playland of all the gear that you would want.
Wow.
And Wolf Kessler was the guy that, would sit there and fix things and make sure everything worked properly.
Nice.
But basically it was like me and Dan and Bob, like, music historian fanatics in this, candy store of gear with a month to make a record. And, they kept coming up with more songs, and no problem if, we finished one song and it's like, wow, okay, it's, 2 p.m, and that felt pretty good to get that one going. And then it's like, well, let's do, a Misfits song, or, they never ran out of things to pull out of their hat to do. Let's do, I don't know if we recorded Wheels of Confusion. Maybe we did. Definitely some Black Sabbath songs and all kinds of like hard rock songs that are not typical of this record, but
Right.
That's from whence their their music background is definitely heavy 70s rock, but then the songs that they wrote were a little bit more variety music, which was also cool, which is very cool, because it's like, we'd play through a song. I kind of, the Bob or Dan would be like, I'm kind of thinking of this with sort of a, Beatlesy sort of vibe. And there's, microphone cabinets, all kinds of stuff. And it's like, well, let's move the drums in this room and set them up and record it like this. And, they had a wonderful, giant, bright, vibrant main room. And there was just plenty of room. You were never crowded. You're never tripping over things. They had a vocal booth. You could put stuff in the booth. You could put stuff out of the booth.
Wow.
And every song we just approach as a totally different thing. And
How luxurious.
Probably, yeah. It was in some ways the most fun thing. And there was, so many songs, and everybody seemed like they were in a good mood and laughing, and we'd go out for dinner and drinks, and there probably so many people would think, oh, they probably work 8 hours a day, we 12-hour days, and work till Bob would be smoking cigarettes and singing into a Neumann M49, like.
And that shit was allowed? Like, nobody was policing that kind of thing?
No, maybe you couldn't smoke in the control room. I can't remember. Maybe you wouldn't smoke in the control, but definitely, there's, I remember totally the stand up on a pole ashtray. And we went through all the different fancy mics they had to see which one sounded best for Bob's voice, and picked Neumann M49, which is a insanely expensive microphone. And one of it became clear quickly that one of the problems. The microphone is very sensitive, and this clicking of the cigarette burning and the little just light clicking, and Bob Reed, I think this record has the greatest singing.
Yeah.
I mean, I love everything about the record, but the music is all wonderful, but the singing is what just seals the deal.
Right.
And so like, I don't know, who might tell Bob Reed he can't smoke while he's, doing the lead vocals, but, everybody goes home or goes wherever they're going like at 1 a.m, sitting there with the multi-track tape, with maybe a comped vocal track of, what you would do back then, and going in there and erasing the little cigarette clicks that were between every line of virtually every song, because he was in his element. He was doing his thing, smoking and singing, busting his lungs out, ripping up the tunes. And it was, it's like, wow. Hey, Bob, would it be possible to, maybe not smoke constantly during this time? Like, I'll try. I'll see what I can do. Okay, good. And you go record. It's like, first few lines, there's no cigarettes.
Check out this on the Splatter album. He's smoking a grit right there in his little picture. In the midst of all the paint. Splatter.
Oh, yeah. No,
he's puffing a grit.
Smoke on. The first few lines, there's no cigarette, and then, maybe a little instrumental part, and you light up a cigarette, and then it goes back. Whatever it takes.
The man is still alive, right?
Yeah,
He's still kicking.
Badass.
Yeah, so I brought, what else? I just wanted to say one more thing. I brought this. So this, I don't think this is in print or available anywhere. I didn't even on Spotify. I'm guessing, but when they came on tour after I gotten that album in Boise at the Neurolux, they were on this tour. I picked up this EP, which is 5-6 songs. Yeah, I guess that's an EP, right? This is pretty good too, but this was recorded a year later after you were done, August of 94 in Emeryville, California. I have no idea, but you had no part of this. This is
I don't think so. No, there was another EP, right?
Well, we were talking earlier about Moonlight and Castanets, but that was a full album that came out subsequent to this. And I can't find my copy, but I rather enjoyed that album too. It was, I guess, some different personnel. Dan wasn't part of that, you said, or I can't. Dan, I feel like Dan Reed is going to call in the middle of this and just say, hey, you're wrong about that.
Yeah, we should have Dan Reed fact checker.
He's definitely going to comment below. I welcome you, Dan. Unfortunately, I can't allow you to be part of the editing process.
Or it'll take
forever.
His face will appear right in the back of the truck.
For the time being, my knowledge is limited in this technology of YouTubing, long-form interview programming, whatever we're doing here.
Whatever you may, whatever shelf you may put it upon.
Right. So I have, a question on Every Day But Saturday. Was it your idea or Bob's idea to have that outro with the 12-string? That do-do-do-do-do. It's very Beatlesque little outro.
Oh, yeah. Ding, 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 ding.
Must have been a Rickenbacker just hanging in the studio or something, or did he own one? Or?
I think Bob was pretty, like his default go-to sound was SG through fuzz pedal through,
Right.
twin reverb. I think it was a cleanish Fender amp, but he always had the fuzz tone. So, the Black Sabbath sound style was his sort of default sound, but then everybody you start talking about the Beatles or 60s music. Oh yeah, we like that just as much. And so Bob was always good about having one of each kind of guitar necessary. And there was a guitar store, what was the name of that guitar store that was right near the studio, and we'd go there several times a week browsing guitars, and I ended up buying 2 guitars there during that session, a 12-string acoustic.
Some kind of allowance for that sort of thing with the advances you were getting, or
I don't know. I don't think so, but and I may be wrong about this, but I believe Bob Reed may have got a publishing deal sort of concurrent to that first album or this one. So there was plenty of money for margaritas and Mexican food. And, nobody really thought twice about, if you want a guitar, let's just get it. Was it Black Market Guitars? Is that what it was called? It was an absolutely fantastic, giant guitar store, and they had all these great guitars. I bought a white SG Junior, mid-60s one, and a mid-60s Gibson 12-string acoustic. And they were, things were crazy not expensive back then. I remember they had 1959 or 1960, like a first-year Epiphone casino there.
Holy shit.
And it was in the
Made in America.
Yeah, royal tan finish. It was like wow, I have never seen that. And it's like, I have to have that. It was $1,000. I was like, Nobody's gonna buy a casino for $1,000. Are you guys out of your mind? It had the metal plaque.
Oh, right, the little
So
T-shaped.
yeah. And it was so cool, and color that I'd never seen before. And gosh, I wish but $1,000 who's going to buy a guitar for $1,000 guitar? Are you serious? If they had 100 Marshall heads, like late 60s through late 70s, they stacks piled up, high watt, Sound City, all the amps you'd want, all the guitars. It was just like the most fabulous place, and it was right there. So I'm sure, it's like, yeah, we want a 12-string. If Bob didn't have one, he'd show up the next day and say, I went down to Black Market and got this. It was. And I think that listening to the record, it sort of bears that out. It's totally like a bunch of music nerds, making things in whatever thoughts we had at the time of how to record it, like what part of the studio to record things in when we were mixing, and it was. It was a 24-track session. We mixed on the half-inch tape. So there was lots of wickety slicing, dicing, editing.
Actual razor blades on the little slants. And
on the 2-inch tape as well as the half-inch ones.
Wow. It's been a while since I see somebody do that. I think I remember Johnny at Egg Studio doing that back in the 2000s.
And, you did it all the time back then because you didn't have
Pro Tools.
There was, we only dreamt of not having to do that.
Right. Wow.
But even the mixing of this record, and we spent so much time, setting up mixes because it's back when you'd run off a mix onto the reel-to-reel, dub it onto a cassette, go out to the car, listen to it on from a cassette tape, and it's like, no, I want it to sound a little more like, blank. It doesn't sound enough like the Beatles, or it doesn't sound enough like Black Sabbath.
Wow.
Can we get and they're like, yeah, what can we do? Like it was totally like a musical vacation playground. No idea seemed too weird or funny, and a lot of times you'd get a record and it's clear that it's supposed to be weird and crazy, and that nothing is supposed to be weird and crazy on this record. It's just all well thought out and well done. I think one of the records we had at that same time was the Flaming Lips. What is that record called?
I'll put it in a subtitle. I got this, but
we were listening to that. It's like, God, this is so great. Like every song on this record, they, just went to town on, and they, just a bunch of music nerds getting together and just a celebration of records and recording styles and, screwing up sounds to a degree, but never unlistenable. It all made sense. It all added up, I thought.
Nice. I mean, it's so rare. I guess there's a few instances of some really good memories I've had recording albums, but this whole Two Words thing sounded like everything was in the right place, and you guys were given the luxury of a lot of time and space and money and you mixed everything in the same place in the same time period.
Yeah. It was the mixing was included. It was not. Yeah. Oh yeah, we went to a different studio. No, the mixing was sort of concurrent. I don't think we recorded everything and then mixed everything. We might have been, not record and finish a song all in one go. But I think it was all sort of mixed together.
Nice.
I could be wrong about that. We'll have to ask Dan about that because I do remember.
Please chime in, Dan.
Yeah.
I know you will. Do you have a favorite track off this album at all. For me, this album reminds me of like Beatles 65, where the first 3 songs are fucking make the whole album. So Toss Up, How You Doing, Side Stick. It's so awesome. And then obviously Saturday and Roy Orbison for me are like the standouts of. Now that I know a little bit more, sometimes when you go behind the scenes and you demystify things or learn about the nuts and bolts of something that you treasure as a piece of art, you come away a little disillusioned or like meeting your heroes, or finding out too much that takes away from your experience. I do not feel that way after learning more about
I don't think there's anything that would ruin your appreciation of this record. Someone would have an idea, maybe we'd be eating tacos and drinking margaritas, and what's the one that starts out with a...
Oh yeah. It's like a very lo-fi thing at first.
Wait, what if we made it sound like, somebody just listening to a cassette, on a thing, and is there some way you could, put a filter on it too? That's like, why do that? Let's just make a cassette of it.
Well, that's what you did.
And put it in a little cassette player,
wow.
and microphone that up, and then splice it into the regular thing.
Oh,
why,
wow.
Why do it in a fake way? It's not like we're going to run out of time or anything here. So let's do it the right way. So we, ran off a mix, put it on the, half-inch thing, ran it onto a cassette, put the cassette into the thing, put a microphone on it across the room, and,
nice.
Did it just the way you would. And there's lots of that sort of ideas on the thing. And I said, it was like, someone would come up with an idea and we'd be like, yep, let's go. let's make it happen. We're gonna, the cymbals to sound like Beatles.
Right.
Tomorrow Never Knows. How do you get that sound of? Well, I'll bet. Let's see what we have over in this wall of compressors. Oh yeah, I don't think they had the Fairchild 660 though that they did up in Vancouver at that studio. But it's like, oh, dang, this is cool. But nobody has the money to buy that kind of thing to use, once a year anymore. But all that stuff was still, in 1993, the studio that we did this at was, there were a bunch of gearheads.
This is that part. You did this part through the tape recorder. This is what sounds like very low.
Yeah, crank it up a little bit. Yeah.
And so the other part of this production sounds like you maybe recorded it at a higher speed and slowed it down, or did you do any of that?
Oh, absolutely. Which is something that nobody really does anymore. But back then, the 24 track, I believe, as well as the half track machine, but mainly the 24 track, has a little dial that you can, you push a button and it locks to 15 IPS or whatever,
Okay.
But then if you take it out of that, then there's a dial that you can adjust the speed and, tune it to whatever you wanted. If you wanted a half step lower or a half step higher or whatever.
Pitch, correct. Pitch the actual song.
Right. And if the song was a little too high, you could slow the tape down a little bit so that the singer could hit the high note and then speed it back up. And if you do it too much, it ends up sounding like, but if you could do it a little bit, but it's too low, or if you just want it to sound weird, and there was no shortage of just wanting things to sound extra heavy, so you just pitch it down a half step and play the guitars, and then
The other way
speed
around.
it, the other way around.
Yeah.
Speed it up, and definitely there was a lot of sitting there tuning the guitars, because you don't want everything to sound like a total mush about a tune.
Right.
Whereas that was pretty, went backwards stuff. You turn the 2-inch tape around and there is some backwards things on here for sure.
Oh, wow.
Which was also really cool, and you don't know what it's going to sound like, and you have to be really careful turning the tape over to do the backwards parts because the numbers of the tracks are opposite what they were. So it is possible to ruin your band track.
Well, I guess a certain element of danger is necessary and something worthwhile.
right.
Some risk taking.
If I remember that way. Sorry, guys. I need to not do that anymore. Learning curve is definitely different because every studio sounds a little different, and the monitors are one way, and how every console is a little different, and things like that.
We're gonna need more tacos and margaritas to figure this out.
Right. Definitely, there was definitely tacos and margaritas in effect.
I've never met Torg and Bean. Were they cool guys as far as?
Oh, absolutely.
And they were involved as much, or, I mean,
just say it was sort of Bob and Dan leading the charge, but I think Bean sings a song or two on here, and Torg, great, always up for a challenge. He was really good at the metal stuff, like as was Bob. Mm-hmm. Absolutely from that walk of life.
Okay.
Yet at the same time, always like, let's figure out something on this hollow body guitar that sounds like, the Beatles or something like that. Everybody was up for a challenge at any point.
Right.
And the other thing that you would probably remember from their live show is how fuzzed out everything was.
Yeah.
I think Torg was more of a Les Paul and a Marshall sort of guy, and Bob was a twin reverb with fuzz pedal kind of guy. But
everything in the mid '90s was that way. It was all sounded blown out and fuzzed out, and then there were like moments of quiet, and then
right.
My band at the time, everybody joked, said we were like Eddie and the Cruisers because we were just such a straightforward rock band. Because we were not cool at all.
If you didn't have two guitar players with fuzz pedals on all the time, then you were Eddie and the Cruisers.
Totally. I mean, I think
we meant to have a little bit of like regular rock and roll sort of a vibe to our music. Yeah. Oh, Eddie and the Cruisers. Where's the sax player?
Well, we did have a sax player for a minute too, which made us fit in with the second wave ska people more than the cocktail crowd. But
that's part of growing up in a way is like how many bands that you may listen to and like, or albums or whatever. Well, that's actually pretty good that you would have totally made fun of and thought all the people that liked that record were stupid when you were in, junior high school or something like that. It's like,
you get very tribal in your youth anyway, to just like get with your pack and figure yourself shit out.
And this Overwhelming Colorfast record is a pretty good example of a no gang mentality. I mean, at heart, like a lot of these songs are kind of 90s alternative rock music,
right?
The 1 full foot, if not both full feet, in 70s hard rock, and both feet in the the Beatles, and
that had to have been what set them apart from me, because I would have been bored of this record and tossed it aside maybe after the first listen. But I could tell Bob was born in like 1964, so his ears by the late 60s, early 70s were absorbing the pop hooks of the day and the time.
Oh, undoubtedly. And his voice is, absolutely killer, on a par with the great Seattle singers. And remember, there was one of the songs that we did that was maybe even a little bit of a tribute to Soundgarden at the time. We can do that. Like, how do we, how we get that sort of drum sound, and how do we get this to work and stuff? And a lot of like low-tuned guitars, and how low can we tune this bass guitar and still get a readable
frequency or whatever.
So, yeah, exactly. How it can actually still read as a bass, and then spend an hour trying to get it so all the notes are in tune, and most of the notes are tuned. We have to punch in these 3 notes because they just sound bad. A lot of old style work done on there, but super fun.
Well, Kurt, I want to thank you so much for taking time out of your, I don't know if it is even a busy Sunday, to talk to me about this record.
The Sunday is full of coffee and rock and roll.
And I don't know how many times this thing has repeated itself since we've been yakking, but
I don't think it's repeated at all. Oh, here we're starting again.
Yeah.
Back at the beginning now.
Back to song 1. Anyway, it is a classic album. I will find the link to get yourself a limited copy on vinyl. The Dan Reed posted on Facebook, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of comments from Dan Reed himself.
Fact checking. I don't think we present him with a lot of facts to check.
I think there's zero fiction here. There might be some fuzzy memories. But
the name of the Mexican joint that we went to, the guitar store, I think we got that. Norman Wolf. And that, just what a facility that was. Would be just so great to have something like that still existed with no digital gear in it.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And you could just tie into...
one of my... If I were to think of back on a place that was fun to be, was Chroma, over there by the Magnolia Bridge.
Mm-hmm.
That was a nice, spacious...
Right. But absolutely spacious. But Brilliant was even more spacious, and they had a separate control room and a big room that you could have a full band in, or just record the drums in. ISO booths and vocal booths. Wow. And everything in one. You could live there. You could, it's just...
You could have your own Mexican restaurant.
You could almost start your own Mexican restaurant there. You could pull a taco truck into the main room there. Yeah,
These are solid, really good, viable ideas.
Yeah, all very good. Norm Kerner, if you're still out there, maybe it's time to open up the bar, Mexican restaurant, and recording studio.
Yes. Well, this has been another solid gold episode of my fledgling little project here.
With a prequel, too.
Yes. I might not even edit this. I might just let it roll from start to finish.
I kind of like when it...
Oh, yeah. I've been doing a lot of that lately. Oh, yeah. I've been doing...
I kind of like that.
Or stop.
Kind of want to listen. I'm going to go find a copy of this and put it on.
Video that I turned. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Handshake on camera. See?
All right. Bye, family.